I'm good.
Vic was joining yesterday night our meetings late in the evening for him, already almost midnight. Maybe. Good morning, everybody. We will just wait for 1 or 2 more minutes and then we will start the webinar. So please bear with us for 2 more minutes. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon to all our participants. I just saw that we have people from Mexico to Africa to Asia Pacific region as part of this webinar. Welcome to this KASpaces Regional Forum on Sustainable Cities and Resilient Communities. As of now, thanks to all the efforts of all the participants also, maybe we have just crossed 100 participants just now. Welcome to this very important and timely webinar, I will say that. This is just a backdrop of what we have done in July, August. We have done 10 regional workshops in the Asia Pacific region, 5 countries in South Asia region and 5 countries in Southeast Asia region, on understanding what is the level of, or what is the status of SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals implementation on ground. Thanks to the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, we have organized these webinars to understand what is the challenge happening in implementation of these SDGs on ground. What's really happening? Like, can we achieve the targets by 2030? Are we in a right path? Or are we not going to achieve at all, maybe of all the SDGs what we are talking about? So just to understand and also to see what are the best practices happening. Maybe some countries are implementing very well and they are going to reach the targets, maybe not even, not till 2030, maybe before that. So to understand what is happening, understand the best practices, how some of the countries, some of the subnational governments or some of the cities are implementing and taking it forward. And what are the challenges they are facing while implementing them? Actually, we don't know. Maybe some of the cities, they could not understand, they don't know how to take it forward. So to get the information, to understand what is happening, how best we can reach the targets by 2030, we have done these regional workshops in 10 countries. And now we are bringing together all the 10 countries and making this as a regional forum on sustainable cities and resilient communities. I'm also happy that we have some participants from Africa, some participants from Mexico. Maybe if they can also come and join us and tell us what is happening in their regions also to take it forward these 3 days webinar. So this webinar is going to, is organized, again, I'm saying that with support from Konrad Adenauer Foundation, thanks to Mr. Christian Ashley and Megha Sharma for their support in organizing this. And I just also want to thank not only my team from ICLEI South Asia and also my regional office in Southeast Asia, under the leadership of Vic Equity India, who is the regional director with us. So I just want to welcome all of you again for this particular regional webinar. This is a 3-day webinar starting from today, 16th, 17th tomorrow, and 18th day after tomorrow. We are doing 3 days the workshop, the regional workshop. Every day it starts at the same time, 10 o'clock of the Bangkok time, and we are going to finish at 1 p.m. the Bangkok time. I know that it's very hard to bring, for me it's 8:30 in the morning to join this, but it's already afternoon maybe, or some of the African, some of the Pacific countries who are joining, or it's mid-noon for some of the other countries on that. So we balancing out with the timings, and I hope you all will join not only just today, but the next 2 days also, to understand, again, to understand what is happening on ground. So we, as I said, that we have discussed within the country what is happening. Now we are bringing all the countries together and taking it forward, how things are. Just to say, my name is Imani Kumar. I'm the regional director with the ICLEI South Asia office and also the deputy secretary general looking after the entire Asia Pacific region. Just the organizers of this webinar. This is thanks again to Konrad Adenauer Foundation, which is a German political foundation. Maybe Mr. Christian Ashley will talk about more on this, why they are interested to see what is happening in Asia Pacific region. But we as an ICLI, Local Governments for Sustainability, we are a city association of more than 2,500 cities all over the world. We have around 24 offices in the world, and also including 6 regional offices in the Asia Pacific region. And I'm happy that my colleague Vic Equitania is here with us. Just to a recap on, maybe I will talk about South Asia, what happened in the South Asian countries, and then maybe I will ask my colleague Vic to talk about Southeast Asia countries, what happened in the regional workshop. Just to come back on the South Asia national events, we have more than, it was for 5 days. In the month of July, which we have organized. We have more than 15 ministries and local government entities have joined, and national level government entities have joined in those 5 days. You can see some of the ministers, Bangladesh Planning Commission, we have the minister from Bhutan, we have ministers from, and you can see your photos also there in that. 23 plus cities and provincial authorities have joined us, and 30 plus CSOs, NGOs, and think tanks are there in the part of the South Asia regional national workshops of that. Next slide. Just to show what happened in this regional workshop. We did it in Sri Lanka, India, Bhutan, Nepal, and Bangladesh. You can see more than 1,300 participants. There's almost 1,400 participants registrations. We have around 1,000 odd participants. I'm happy. I hope Conrad Adenauer Foundation is also happy that we have more female participants in the South Asian one than the male participants. So more gender balance, I will say, are towards female participants. So this is a good thing happened. I'm happy that we have discussed at national level. Next slide. And these are the various institutions which have supported us. Both at the national level and also at the regional level. And a lot of academic institutions were also part of these webinars. So it's research, it's implementation, it's the policy level. So all of them have come together. And I am not like what I can say here is that is the objective, or that is the motto of the SDGs, bringing together all the participants, bringing together all the stakeholders, and discuss how can we reach the sustainable development goals by 2030. So this is what was discussed during this 5 days, and you will have more information on Southeast Asia information through my colleague Vic on that. Next slide. Just again a recap on these sustainable development goals have started on the January 1st, 2016. We are already 5 years or more than 5 years into this pathways or these targets. By December 31st, 2030, 2030, we have to achieve all these sustainable development goals. More than we have 17 goals, 169 targets, and 230 indicators. So this is split into how we can achieve the sustainable development. And the theme or the motto is leave no one behind. I think that's the main important point. How can we bring together all the participants, all the stakeholders? And it depends on the 5 Ps, that is people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. I hope we will achieve these targets by 2030. Just to understanding of the core framework of the SDGs, as I said already, it's leaving no one behind. So it's inclusion, it's participation, it's growth for all. Bringing together the poor people, bringing together the marginalized people, and also the rich provinces or rich states or rich nations together, and see how we can take forward the growth for all of us. I think that's the important point. And besides the global monitoring, we talk about the national monitoring, at a city level monitoring, or a subnational level monitoring on that. So unless until you monitor that, you don't know where you have reached, you don't know how and when you are going to achieve all this thing on that. So just to tell you again, I think there is a lot of flexibility within the SDG agenda. We have national and state circumstances and requirements and priorities to determine the national and state SDGs. That is the one reason or one difference between the Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, and the Sustainable Development Goals. It's not that this is what the target, what every country, every state, every province has to agree, or every state has to reach on that. So there is a lot of flexibility, like if you can make that cut and reach that particular goal, that is good enough on that. Again, just to showcase the progress, we have repeated these slides, maybe whoever have attended the previous webinars. Sufficient progress was made on the Sustainable Development Goal 9 about the industry, innovation, and infrastructure. On the 11, Sustainable SDG Goal 11, that is the Sustainable Cities and Communities, still a lot of things has to be done actually. So we are still far behind what we need to achieve on that. And many parts of the world are still progressively going towards the climate change. I hope something, maybe what happened in Glasgow last week will help us out to progress further, because we talked about more on the finances in the Glasgow COP. We hope the finances will flow to the various countries, subnational governments, national governments, so that they can maybe accelerate the actions on ground on that. One more slide on the progress of all the targets in the Asia Pacific region. Just to say that we have just may achieve only 10% of the targets. That's what the UN report says that. And out of the 104 measurable targets of the SDGs, the region is tracked only on 9 by the 2030. So we need to do a lot of things. We need to understand where the challenge is, why we are not going to achieve all this. So this is the platform like this. I think it is going to help from the national government perspective, the subnational or city level perspective, to understand where and why, what went wrong, how we can make it fast, how we can reach our targets on that. So these are this is the progress, what's happening in the Asia Pacific region. And I hope, I wish all of us will discuss in next 3 days, what are the challenges, how we can achieve, how we can fast track the SDGs in the Asia Pacific region. So I just want to welcome again all the participants, and I want to thank again Mr. Christian Ashley from the Conrad Aggregator Foundation, and Megha Samra also, and also my colleagues from Italy, Southeast Asia, and all the participants from the ministries. So I'll just stop here, and I will ask my colleague, Regional Director from the Southeast Asia office, Italy Southeast Asia office, Vic, to take over from here and give his opening remarks and share what is happening in the South Asia region, and also the events what we have organized last time in Southeast Asia. Vic, welcome again, and the floor is yours.
Thanks, Kumar. Good morning to everyone. Welcome to this webinar. Southeast Asia is a highly diverse region consisting of 11 countries that registered a total population of 674 million. Income and wealth are highly disparate, as 2 of the wealthiest, Brunei and Singapore, and 2 of the poorest countries in the world are found in the sub-region. Southeast Asia is incredibly complex, that its challenges are often unique from one community to the next, has made it difficult to solve common problems. The UN Sustainable Development Goals present ASEAN with an unprecedented opportunity for change. They should serve as a call to action for the public and private sectors and non-state actors to move away from a siloed view of issues and instead align themselves to achieve a multifaceted impact. Regional initiatives towards the SDG implementation must be strengthened further, as this could contribute significantly to the efforts at the national and local level. Let us remember that sustainability without development is not sustainable. Likewise, development achieved unsustainably will not last. We need to educate all stakeholders on the enduring mutual benefits that truly sustainable development can foster. In an effort to dig deeper into the SDG implementation in the region, a webinar was conducted between July to September in 5 countries in Southeast Asia, namely the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, Cambodia, and Laos. The priority sectors that were discussed were affordable housing, green urban spaces, water management, waste management, renewable energy, sustainable transportation, climate change impacts, and adaptation practices. Country-specific challenges and innovative means of addressing them were shared by different stakeholders, ranging from high-level representatives of the national ministries and local government units, decision makers and think tanks of private institutions, CSOs, NGOs, academic institutions, development partners, and researchers. The webinars piqued the interest of 1,310 registrants and were attended by a total of 784 virtual participants. It is noteworthy that we were also able to conduct a hybrid discussion with 25 speakers and discussants in an arranged meeting room in Vientiane. This was made possible by following the country's strict protocol for mass gathering under the COVID-19 condition. On the other hand, our viewership in social media reached a total of 1,762 views. The successful country webinars in Southeast Asia were made possible through the support and cooperation of these 57 organizations. They are the organizations which are working directly to move the 5 countries towards the achievement of its target under SDG 11 on making its cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. We were put together to materialize a shared belief that accelerating the exchange of ideas and scaling up good practices would help address challenges that hamper sustainable development in the region. On the same manner, we are confident that this KASpaces regional webinar would also provide informative discourse and initiate noble partnerships to sustain each country's efforts towards sustainability while overcoming challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. We at KASpaces look forward to a stronger collaboration and dialogue towards an effective and sustainable recovery. We must do this together towards a lasting, sustainable, and inclusive recovery. We hope for your active participation in the next days, today and the next days. And thank you and good day to everyone.
Thank you, Vic. Thank you. Thanks for all the support. And as I said, that it was good that we had these national level webinars in July, August, September in South Asia and Southeast Asian countries. As Vic said, that we also had one in-person workshop or a hybrid workshop, maybe I will call it that way, where participants have joined in person as well as online on that. So all this happened thanks to Konrad Adenauer Foundation and thanks to Mr. Christian Ashley, his leadership and guiding us to see what is happening in the Asia Pacific region. So I'm happy today that Mr. Christian Ashley is with us. He's the Director, Regional Program, Political Dialogue Asia from the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. He's in Singapore. Thank you for all your support, Mr. Christian Ashley, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. Dear Dr. Rajesh Kumar, Director of the COVID-19 core team at the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare from the Government of India. Dear Mr. Imani Kumar, Executive Director at ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability in South Asia. dear Mr. Victorino Aquitania, Regional Director of ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability in Southeast Asia, estimated experts, dear ladies and gentlemen. It is a big honor and a big pleasure for me to welcome you all to this KASpaces regional forum on sustainable cities and resilient communities. As my two dear colleagues from ICLEI have already mentioned, this is the ending point and at the same time the highlight to a fairly big effort that has taken place over the last few months of organizing 10 separate national webinars that look into the Sustainable Development Goal number 11 and its different sub-targets in 5 South Asian countries and in 5 Southeast Asian countries. You have already seen how many experts and how many stakeholders participated in those events, and I'm very happy to be able to welcome a lot of you who have already have taken part in the national webinars, as well as some new audience from all over the world to today's webinar, which will continue tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Please allow me to quickly talk a bit about the idea of KASpaces. Konrad Adenauer Foundation is a German political foundation. We have our headquarters in Berlin and we are active in over 100 offices around the world. The focal areas of our work are security, innovation, political participation, and the Sustainable Development Goals. In Asia, we are present with 22 offices, and in Singapore, we have 3 regional programs that are looking after the whole region, and the program that I'm representing, the Political Dialogue Asia, is one of these 3 regional programs, and it also is the one that works on the Sustainable Development Goals. You've seen in the overview that Imani Kumar has shared that the way to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals is rocky, and we've seen an even bigger hurdle in the COVID-19 pandemic, which has really, basically thrown us back on quite a few of the Sustainable Development Goals. So at the beginning of the year, we thought about what we can do in this situation. Usually Konrad Adenauer Foundation, the regional programs, try to bring together stakeholders for face-to-face meetings. But since this is not possible, we have come up with the idea of KASpaces, and we have decided to focus on 2 Sustainable Development Goals in particular. The first one is number 4, connected to education, because we believe that education is actually attached to quite a few of the Sustainable Development Goals. If we are able to improve education, I'm personally sure that we are also better equipped to fight poverty, to improve our health, to improve female empowerment and representation. So to me, education is one of the key sectors when it comes to the Sustainable Development Goals. The other one is Sustainable Development Goal number 11 on sustainable cities and communities. And this is the project line that we started out together with ICLEI. And I'm immensely thankful that we found such a strong partner for this series of webinars. You have seen the amazing and impressive list of partners that have come together to help us to get an understanding of what's happening, not only on the national level, but also on the local level in the 10 countries where we hosted our webinars. Now, I mentioned that I believe that education is a key area, a key topic for the whole Sustainable Development Goals. And I think where it takes place, where we really have to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, this is in the cities. And I think in both cases, we've seen that both areas were particularly affected by COVID-19. Education, because students were not able to go to schools anymore, and cities, because they changed their character during COVID-19 totally. What used to be busy mega cities went into shutdown. We had to face the challenge that, of course, the risk of being infected with COVID-19 was much higher in the cities, being dense, crowded areas. And so I think it deserves really particular focus to think about how cities will develop into a post-COVID-19 era, and how is this connected with the Sustainable Development Goals agenda. I'm very, very grateful for all the expertise that was shared during the 10 webinars, and we are in the process of preparing a written overview of all the webinars to make sure that no idea and no insight is lost. But at the same time, given our regional responsibility, I'm very happy that we are able to have this concluding 3-day webinar over the next 3 days, which brings together the different regional perspectives or the country perspectives. And as with the webinars, we are focusing on 6 areas over the next 3 days. Internal migration, which has become rampant in some of the countries we are discussing during COVID-19. We are talking urban climate resilience, a very timely topic given the COP26 event in Glasgow that has just concluded. We are discussing affordable housing, which I think is a very important social element to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. We are discussing waste and water management, which are also very key for the development of urban areas. And we are discussing the question of sustainable transport. At the beginning of the webinar, I would already like to thank all the experts that are making time to share their experiences, their insights with us over the next 3 days. And I would like to thank you, the audience, the participants. I hope that we will see very engaged discussions and that we will find ideas, best practices, networks in other countries that will help us to really come together as a community in Asia that is trying to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal from the civil society side, from the academia, and of course also from the policy makers. I'm absolutely thankful to ICLEI again for organizing all of these webinars, bringing together so much knowledge, being such a wonderful and reliable partners. All the webinars were super well organized so far, and I think the same is true for this last one in the series. So I'm looking very much forward to the discussions that we are going to have over the next 3 days. I would like to thank you for attending this. I wish us fruitful discussions. And with that, I would like to give it back to Imani Kumar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Christian Ashley, for your opening remarks. And I just want to thank you and Megha for all the support what you have given. It's not always from a funding agency or a donor agency to be as a partner. Always people think that, okay, we are giving money, so you go and do, do all the things. But thank you for your leadership and Megha's support we have achieved. And I hope we will get some good practices, good challenges, and we will help through these regional webinars. Maybe some more progress on ground on the SDGs, what we are just talking about. And I completely agree with you. I think education, awareness, and bringing together all the stakeholders. So that's maybe the key to achieve all the Sustainable Development Goals. I started when I started, it was around 100 odd participants. Today, just now we have more than 180. I think 188 as of now. Thank you all for joining. I was just seeing somebody from Peru, somebody from Mexico, Africa, not only just Asia Pacific region. I think these are the participants on this. As Mr. Christian Ashley has said, we don't want to see these numbers. We want to see how well we can discuss about the best practices happening on ground, how well we can make the progress on the SDGs. So if we can support through this, our discussion to the national governments, if they can achieve much more, some more achievements towards the Sustainable Development Goals. I think that's the objective of these webinars, not just to talk and bring all of you on this particular platform. With this, I just also want to thank Dr. Rajesh Kumar, who is the Chief of Conservative of Forest from Climate Change from Government of Arunachal Pradesh and special invitee the former COVID-19 core team member. Thank you, sir. Thanks for joining us this webinar. Thanks for taking your time out from your busy schedule and joining with us. Maybe before I ask you, sir, we will just take one group photo with all the participants. Maybe I request everyone, if it is okay, don't mind, open your cameras. We just want to see your faces, because this is the only way we can capture all of you. We used to have good photographs for in-person workshops, but this is the way maybe we can collect all of you. So please open your cameras, and I will ask my team if they can. There's still some of the participants don't want to show their faces, but it's okay. Maybe I will just ask, I'll just count 1, 2, 3, and then my team will take a group photo. 1, 2, 3. Thank you again. Maybe one more, if we can, please smile. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thank you again for all of you for joining us. We are at 191, I think, this thing. So now I will invite Dr. Rajesh Kumar as keynote remarks from his side. Thank you again, sir, for joining the session, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I have a presentation, so I'd like to share it first.
Sure, sir.
Thank you. Hope it is visible over there.
Yes, sir. If you can make it the presentation mode.
Yeah, it's already in the presentation. Yes. Yeah, thank you so much, and good morning to all of you. And I know we have colleagues from Peru, so it'll be good evening. So whatever the time of the day, happy greetings from the land of dawn-lit mountains in India, that is Arunachal Pradesh. We get the first sunrise of the day in the country here. So greetings to all of you, and welcome to this short discussion on sustainable cities and resilient communities, with a particular focusing on Asia. I've been asked to talk particularly in the context of Asia. As we know, Asia is a hub of a lot of activities. It's like a growing region in the world. And when it comes to urbanization, it's already nearly 50% in some sense, and it is projected to be crossing that level of urbanization soon. And if you look at the projections by UN Habitat, I think more than 15 mega cities of the world by 2030 will be located in this region only. But this region has a certain unique characteristics. It's going to be driven by certain megacity based approaches, or rather megacities will be leading the urbanization. Of course, the landscape, the continental scenario will have several megacities plus a lot of micro and meso level cities. But what is going to be unique is the sort of connectivity that will come developed in the times to come to connect these sort of megas and meso and micros. So this will be sort of a urban conglomeration that is getting like expanded vast. So here the point of great concern is that unless we put the urbanization in a very resilient and sustainable path, definitely the ill effects of urbanization, rather the vicious circles which are currently operating in the urban landscapes, can spread across and create havoc. Like cities are generally known, or rather understood to be like centers of, or rather we aim cities to be centers of excellence in terms of technological harnessing, economic production, and our aspirations for sustainable life and livelihood. So definitely cities are game changers, but the way urbanization has happened so far has offered us lessons of so many pluses and minuses. So best opportunities are in hand. For example, because of the advancements in the governance scenario, many of the cities and urban centers are able to deliver services close to the doors. Like that load of service has picked up even in the city of Delhi. Doorstep level services have started, and similar experiences are available from other cities in the country and maybe in other parts of the Asia also. But what makes it more concerned is that, like in the introductory remark, Mr. Christian mentioned about the issues about education, issues about equity, issues about environmental challenges that cities face. They are quite unique and I would say more or less cosmopolitan and general to many of these cities in Asia. Maybe we have exceptions in some cities, which are like role model ones, but otherwise most of the cities are facing more or less the same sort of problems. So our approaches will call for more generic inputs plus escalation of the positive deviants wherever available with our continental landscape. Now on SDG 11, Mr. Christian has already mentioned, so our focus is on SDG 11, but if you look at the way in which our cities are currently in, I think many of the SDG goals are very relevant to really push these cities to come to the level of sustainability. I'll be briefly touching them in the coming slides. Now, of late, this concept of living in cities has also become a risk that we faced during the COVID times. Earlier, we believed that cities are more safer or a point of hope and a point of great living. But because of those concepts, the rural-urban migrations happened, and urban areas became really dense with a lot of population and created issues of sustainability. But now, when the COVID struck us, the concern of risk of living in cities also became quite evident. There was a risk of affordability of services. There was a risk of even open spaces. There was a risk of water availability. There was even risk of how to live together in such cases of very strong pandemics. So reverse migrations also happened. So these are realities before us, and these realities are thinking, or rather forcing us to think greater and louder, how we can really make cities resilient in its true sense to the population it can carry, and become robust in its developmental trajectories forward. Definitely, we have to now rebuild the systems, especially in the context and the experience we gained from COVID. That will again be a sort of new dimension to the old concept of economic growth and development cities have been aspiring for. And definitely that growth will be based on sustainability concerns only. Now, we have two immediate triggers. One of the trigger is definitely COVID-19. It really questioned the way cities live, how cities work, and how cities connected. Yes, COVID taught these lessons in a little hard way, but definitely we have a lot of good things to pick up. Like living, definitely it has forced us to think and live according to sustainability. Working, it opened new concepts and acceptance for remote working from home, and greater application of technology, greater application of inclusion. So definitely this pandemic has taught us a lot of new dimensions for putting the cities on track of greater sustainability, I would say, at this moment. Then connections. Of course, we thought of a lot of concerns about sustainable connectivity in cities context. But now COVID has also made a sort of a teletransportation a reality. So this is a new dimension, I guess, getting added to most of the city plannings. I have an example, at least from a policy perspective from the state which I am working with now, that I'll be sharing later. And now again, COP26 is yet another landmark voice. Definitely COP26 is a reinforcement over the experience we gained, or rather consolidating the experience we gained in COVID-19, pushing the cities towards greater collaboration and greater commitments for resilience and climate change response. Now, I just briefly mentioned how sustainable goal number 11 is not like a sort of exclusive one. Rather, it will be supported by several pillars of such SDGs. Because if you look at the cities across Asia, take it Dhaka or take it Hanoi or take it Delhi or any Indian cities, everywhere there is an issue of environmental conservation, water issue, there is educational quality outcome issue, there is a health issue, there is an inclusion issue, there's a poverty issue. It's also like, again, now with the new challenges, we have the issues of industry and innovation and infrastructure and energy being on the climate resilient side. And again, the issues are related to space and availability of basic input services like water for sustainable living, especially from the lessons from COVID. So what we can say is that, yes, cities are not like a sort of individual entities as they perceived to be before. Now it has a time, the time has come where cities have to collaborate together, learn from each other's experience, how to optimize resources, how to reinvestment or redirect the investments or investment possibilities towards a better resilient or a combination of better resilient technologies and a sort of escalating or scaling of the positive deviance, which some cities might have gained and could be applicable in other cities as well. So again, little bit reflecting from the COVID-19 pressures we suffered in cities. Of course, it questioned on the environmental quality of the cities to support these people. And definitely, I'm sure water-related issues were there very adversely affecting the response strategies of the cities, especially maybe in water hit areas, maybe in Africa or in some parts of Asia as well. And urban spaces and their challenges we just talked about. And now, if we particularly reflect on sustainable cities and COP26, I just wanted to share some of the highlights from the recent initiative. I will not spend more time because Tina has already highlighted it. Of course, the governments have united, the local governments have united. That's a great thing. And I think this united effort will spread across the cities in terms of sharing the experience, in terms of capacity building, in terms of collaborative action. And then definitely there is a clear question of investment, which is a requirement for pushing all this agenda forward. So this may be a sort of area where private and public and even civil society actors have to work together to realize. And definitely the COP26 has also brought in the dimension of climate accountability for the cities. So we have a sort of ecosystem which is very much charged up now. Maybe in the coming years, this energy will take us much forward in realizing the requirement of resilient cities in an evidenced and accountable and enhanced way. And one more point I would like to highlight here is that we have shared again our commitments in COP26 by all countries with respect to their NDCs. But if we look at the NDCs and if you segregate the cities from that, I think 50% of the commitments under NDCs could be simply achieved through the actions in cities. So that puts cities as a real change maker, even in the context of a climate change response across the world. Now, COVID-19 recovery paths, that is a new, rather not very, like it has been in vogue. We discussed in the last year's conference also. So this recovery path is offering tremendous opportunities. The tremendous opportunities for bringing in equity concerns to the cities, collaboration for SDG action, collaboration for a whole of society response, including private and civil societies to address the sustainability issues of cities, and obviously vertical and horizontal integration of leaders in the cities. That again is an exemplification of the reflections from COP26. And then obviously there is a clear need to push indigenous technologies, nature-based solutions, especially for protecting and conserving the natural resources, including water in cities, and promotion of local skills and values. These are key to realize a track of highly efficient but cost-effective ways to approach towards resilient cities. And many of these are indeed low-hanging fruits, probably will be able to be like realized in the shorter time. And now, perhaps certain areas of action which came to my mind where yes, we need a strong climate resilient planning happening in the cities. Even now in the context of COP26 agreement, it could be a sort of collaborative planning, at least at a regional level. Then obviously we need to focus on sustainable transport, again, just to cut down the emissions from the cities. And financial inclusion and equity should be at the center, learning the lessons from COVID, from the lessons of the external reverse migration happened. We need to bring in more inclusion and equity to generate and set on the production sector in the cities to work really robust. The COVID has really disrupted the medium scale and the small scale production sectors in the production units in the cities. And then obviously knowledge development and management is very key, because without evidence-based approach and clearly validated knowledge, we will not be able to realize greater values for the investments we make. So that is a clear concern to protect the interest of taxpayers' money. And obviously climate change is hitting very hard. Many cities, many states in Asia have been facing intense rainfalls, disrupting the life and life quality. Besides that, adversely affecting even the prospects of infrastructure already there. I mean to say, much amount of damage has been done. So resilient or re-resilient development and planning of the cities is also very key. And obviously, finally, we should aim for a climate resilient, neutral, and climate protected or proofed cities. Of course, at this moment, it could be a little more ambitious, but I think the way things are moving, especially with the experience of climate change related events, extreme weather events we have been facing, I think we should also keep this climate proofing of cities in a clear and evidence way in our strategies, at least in the medium and long term. Now, just would like to share with you with pride, even in the state of Arunachal Pradesh, for this first time in the country, we have adopted a ministerial level climate change declaration focusing on climate resilient and responsive Arunachal Pradesh. This has many sectors, key sectors, right from natural resources, forestry, agriculture, then the mitigation sectors like transport, urbanization, sustainable urban development, including equity and gender. So it's a quite comprehensive subnational action, first ever happened in India, focusing on a climate resilient and responsive development trajectory for this state in the northeast part of India. And it has three targeting for short term, aiming at 2023, and medium term, aiming at 2030, for coinciding with SDG targeting, and 2047 is the long-term targeting, coinciding with the 100 years of independence of India. The point why I'm highlighting is that it's time to go for subnational level resilient actions, because national actions will have an overall perspective, but the real actions have to happen at the subnational and local levels, which will need for understanding the challenges and the prospects of the risk and the vulnerabilities for the resources and the communities at a local level, and charting out local level pragmatic and result yielding actions. So I guess this puts the state of Arunachal Pradesh maybe within an elite club of 70 national entities, subnational entities, which went forward for subnational commitments in climate response. I guess other cities and other states in Asia will also follow the same course of proactive response. With that, I would like to wish this conference great time trying to deliberate excellent ideas and sharing great positive deviations we recorded from different parts of the different cities in Asia, and probably foster a platform for collaborative action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rajesh Kumar.
You're welcome.
For sharing what's happening, not only in your state, but actually I think your ideas, your views on how do we fast track the sustainable development goals. And I just want to congratulate you for your leadership and for your political leadership in Arunachal Pradesh. I think you have shown to other provinces and other cities, maybe in the world, not only in India, maybe in other countries in Asia Pacific region, how political leadership can change the things also. And thank you, sir, for sharing.
Thank you so much. Good day to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So with this, our opening session is going to end. And as Mr. Keshan has said in his speech, we have 6 technical topics which we are going to discuss today, tomorrow, and after. Today, we have 2 technical sessions, one on the internal migration and the climate resilience. And tomorrow, we will talk about more on the affordable housing and holistic waste management. And on the 18th, we will talk about sustainable urban transport and integrated urban water management, which are all very much important for achieving the sustainable development goals. So with this, I will just hand it over to my colleague, Mr. Ashish Rao Gorpade, is the Deputy Director with ICLEI South Asia Office. Before I hand it over and start the session, the technical session, I just want to thank each and everyone for joining this webinar. And I request everyone also to be here tomorrow, not only just today. This is a 3-day regional webinar. And one important point, be a little bit specific. Let us have a discussion rather than just one presentation from the speakers and we finish the time of the technical sessions. So just put all the speakers, I request them to just put in few bullet points your words, your point of view, how we can achieve or what are the challenges when you are implementing the sustainable development goals, so that maybe others can respond. If you have a question, others can answer it. But if you have an answer, maybe it will be helpful for others to understand how you are achieving the SDGs. So please be specific and let us have more discussion. Let us discuss further and take forward good messages home so that we can go back and implement on ground about the sustainable development goals. With this, again, I just want to thank Conrad Adenauer Foundation, KASpaces program, Mr. Christian Ashley, for all your support. Mega, thank you for support for the last few months. With your support, I think we have achieved all this. And I'll just hand it over to my colleague Ashish to take forward with the first internal migration session. Ashish.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Welcoming all to the session 1 of this regional forum. We're going to be talking about internal migration. And as you see on the screen, we have an interesting list of 3 learned panelists with us. Before I introduce the panelists, I think a little bit about internal migration. This is a very important issue. We all know about it. We know people migrate internally within countries for various reasons, be it work, be it marriage, be it education, better opportunities generally. Climate-related migration is another aspect. But in this session, I think we're going to be talking a little bit more about how this is happening, why this is happening, how to address it, plan for it, or manage it, learnings on how things are being done already on ground, good practices, and a little bit about challenges different communities, different countries are trying to deal with. And in terms of the speakers we have with us, we have Ms. Mukta Naik, who is a fellow from the Center for Policy Research, India. We have Mrs. Manju Guru, who is the co-founder and strategic advisor for Poraki, Nepal. We also have with us Dr. Nishchal Nath Pandey, who's the director of the Center for South Asian Studies. He is also the convener of the Consortium of South Asian Think Tanks And they will tell us a little bit more about how they are knowing about migration in their specific context, and any challenges or learnings we can learn from. I hope that the discussion that is initiated through their presentations is interesting based on what we hear from them. As we move on, I think it'll be good to give a little bit of the background context. If I can have the next slide, please. So generally, I think a significant proportion of internal migration is rural-urban, contributing to rapid urbanization. There are gendered trends that exist in internal migrations. Usually, males tend to dominate such migrations, and majority of rural-urban or long-term migrants are females. Migration often is to find work in the informal sector. Most of the migrants usually do that, but they are then also vulnerable to different issues that they face in their destination locations. One of the causes is rural poverty and lack of opportunities in those contexts that becomes a push factor for people to move to better locations in the search of better opportunities. I mentioned earlier that environment-related migration is something that we are seeing more in the current times, as climate impacts are forcing certain communities in certain locations to move to places where they can access resources better, which they are no longer able to in their home locations. So with this as a background, with this as a general context, I think it'll be great to hear from our first panelist, Ms. Mukta Nayak. Muktaji is an architect and urban planner. She's been working on urbanization and internal migration specifically. And I think today she's going to tell us a little bit about the destination context of urban migration, how this is happening. So I'm very happy to invite Muktaji to come over and share her thoughts and tell us a little bit about what we can understand better on internal migration. Muktaji, could you join us, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Ashish. Very kind of you to introduce me and set the context. I'm going to speak specifically sort of in this moment of COVID recovery and Build Back Better, taking examples from my work in India, which is, of course, I mean, the problems of internal migrants in India were displayed for the world to see last year. And I don't really need to go into what happened and why it happened, because I think a lot of people already have that. Can someone please enable my screen share so that I can put up my slides? That would be useful. The slides are just sort of a bit of, what do you call it? A crutch while I speak. Not, can you see it now? Yeah, I can't move them at all. Is someone okay?
I'm
okay.
operating.
All right. Thanks, Keshav. Thank you. You can move to the next slide. So this is yeah. So very quickly, COVID had very specific impacts on migration, and here I think oftentimes we conflate internal migrants within, I mean, they're a subset of the informal workforce. And so it's sort of, there is this problem in which we sort of move between the category of migrant and informal worker without sometimes having a very keen, without differentiating very keenly between these. And similarly, when we talk about cities, we move between the category of urban poor and migrant just as casually. And we do that as researchers too. So that's the first thing I wanted to point out. The data systems don't allow us to do it, but also these have become stylized facts. And we need to be aware that within that category of urban poverty or within that category of informal workers, migrants face very specific issues. So if cities have to build resilience for migrants who are an economic backbone, however low wage and low skill their work is, it's important work, A. And as Ashish pointed out, migration is an important way for people to work themselves out of poverty intergenerationally. So if we think about it from both these perspectives, it's important for us to think about what migrants specifically are facing and what cities can do for them. So in India specifically, we know that migrant workers lost jobs, but they were not able to find those jobs back as easily as non-migrants. So that was the critical differentiator. We found them making intermittent migrations back to the city in pursuit of jobs, and then going back to rural areas and waiting out as the multiple waves of COVID sort of ripped through cities in this very uneven, confusing way that even those of us who've been skilled and who have much better job positions have found difficult to navigate, whether it's to meet our parents or relatives, whether it's to travel for work, whether it's to just manage disease. Secondly, so they've been out of work for a long time. Then housing has been a huge vulnerability. This is not just because migrants tend to live in non-notified slums, they tend to live in congested spaces, but also because they live on rent with oral agreements and are prone to evictions. And they can't survive in the city if they can't pay this rent. So of all the work we did on return migration, rent came up as a big aspect. And a lot of people now have been batting for inclusion of rent within the ambit of social protection, though we're very far away from that sort of an achievement in the context of India, where rental housing itself has entered the policy space formally only because of COVID and the return migration. In some fashion. So that's where we are right now. Next, please, Keshav. So I wanted to focus on this, on the fact that what happened in Indian cities was not just because of all the bad things that cities are, in the sense that they're not planned well enough. They are large, unmanageable metropolitan spaces, especially governance systems are not configured to meet the needs of unorganized and informal workers. We know all of that. But what was also problematic was that migrants couldn't access the social protection, the mechanisms that were already available were not accessible to migrants, and there was no localized data. So cities did not know how many migrants were there, where did they live. So even during a lockdown, when NGOs, worker collectives, corporate organizations were saying, we have the funds, we've mobilized all these resources, what do we do with it? Local governments were not able to guide them and say, go here, do this. They had to actually find systems on the go to distribute relief. This I think should be a key learning that we take forward. What did people do? Can we collate the databases that people gathered during that time? Unfortunately, we seem to have lost a bit of momentum on this, and we've moved to very centralized systems of registration and gathering data, and the local government's agency in this, or the immense complexity and variation across cities is a little bit lost in the discourse right now. So I wanted to flag that. And of course, in the case of migrant workers, because they're informal workers, they have low access to health insurance, out-of-pocket city expenses are high, and they cannot sometimes access adequate health facilities. This has been highlighted that when they went back to rural areas, source areas are often deficient in these facilities. So reverse migration did not necessarily help them access better health care. It just helped them escape from a place where they were finding it economically very difficult to survive. So this interrelationship between the health, the climate concerns, the sustainability concerns, and economic concerns is also, I think, something that we need to think about a little more centrally than we have up until now. Next, please. And the biggest thing, of course, is that social protection is sort of embedded between two contrasting logics. One is the logic of universalization. So education is a right, universalize it. Everybody can access education by law, or everybody can access health by law. That's one part of it. And the second part is that what does that mean in practice? Is there an eligibility criteria? Can I walk in anywhere and demand and access these facilities? Or are there some administrative barriers that crop up for me that then render me out of that system, even though legally and constitutionally and in every which way I'm supposed to be in it? So this is sort of the situation of internal migration, where, very different to the discourses in cross-border migration or international migration, even though there is a promise of mobility, you actually do not get it. So you experience fragmented citizenship within national borders. And this happens through location-linked delivery, which is the case of the public distribution system, for instance, in India, and now which they're trying to rectify with the one nation, one ration card kind of a concept, or domicile-based eligibility, where there are a bunch of state schemes, so subnational governments impose, identity or eligibility restrictions on things, and registration barriers themselves. You need certain documentation. You need your contractor to sign off on something to be able to register for a particular scheme, etc. So these are problems that we all know and we are trying to fix, but again, like I said before, with a top-down sort of lens at this point of time. Next, please. Yeah, so that's the question. I just wanted to say a few things on. Next. So the big picture, like I said, is that the impulse of national government is to put out schemes that are effective, but state schemes are not so impulsive, and local execution is even more varied. So you actually have a picture where there is a very good intent, but when by the time it comes down to the ground, we have a situation where the migrant is often not even aware of what their rights are, where they can go and access whatever they can access. During COVID, we saw conflicting guidelines, advisories, directives coming down to local governments, both rural panchayats as well as urban local governments, which they did not have the capacities to interpret and navigate. So two things were happening. One is that local governments were struggling to meet these top-down directives. And parallelly, innovations were coming up locally because oftentimes these top-down directives were completely out of context with what was possible in that local space. In the case of India, the rural-urban axis, the rural and the urban situations are also very different. Urban local bodies are particularly weak in terms of being able to, in terms of institutional and governance, arrangements to address any complex situation. And we really saw that because while gram panchayats were able to at least pick up the directives and do those things, maybe, yes, of course, with very overworked frontline workers, but they were able to do things. It was much harder for urban local bodies to do the same things. But we do know that the pandemic has placed safe migration on the policy radar. So now the needle has somewhat shifted from a very sedentary policy approach saying, let's keep them in the villages, let's not, that's always been something. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but the point is that that we are seeing seasonal and circular migration. So it's not that people are looking to permanently migrate, but they need to hedge between farm and non-farm income in order to survive, in order to create some sort of surpluses and savings so that their next generation has a foothold to move forward. So we have to accept that reality. And I think that pandemic helped us as policy practitioners push that into the discourse, saying we can no longer say rural development is the only solution. We will have to look at what cities can do. I'll give you two examples on the next two slides. Next, please. Of what strong municipalities can deliver. So here, a municipality like Surat, which has, which is relatively better set up to deliver services, and these are pre-existing conditions. So they already had clustered Anganwadis, which in migrant-dense areas, and so access to ICDS, immunization and nutrition was possible. And even at labor camps, there was delivery. Cash incentives were already provided to frontline workers to include migrants within health schemes, including personal visits for registration. Institutional deliveries were emphasized. Online birth registrations were very, very strong because it was driven through hospitals and not through the individual applying for the birth certificate. There were mobile van services that were pre-existing, that were deployed in order to carry out rapid antigen tests and distribute certain, whether it's sanitizers or whether it's among migrant communities. So these were things that they had set up before COVID, which they could quickly leverage and redeploy for COVID. So this is an example of when you are a strong municipality, what you can do. And the second example, next slide, please, is that of Delhi, where I was talking about the exceptions stuff. We don't do this as a practice, but this happened, and now we're going to evolve a new system. So Delhi had this emergency PDS system, where temporary PDS was distributed to those who were not eligible through an emergency, through an online registration system, which is quite simple. That also migrants had a problem accessing, but with the help of civil society, many of them were able to enroll. It was a self-enrollment process. It did not require anything except an Aadhaar card. We can debate the need or not need of Aadhaar, but it was a one-step sort of a process. You could get an SMS back, and then you could go to your local school and pick up those rations. In the first wave, they actually could converge across several departments in order to deliver this, but they couldn't replicate this when the second wave hit. So what is it that cities are now unable to learn from their own? I mean, so a lot of bureaucrats, a lot of IS officers actually told me this. We did a 5-state study with UNICEF on COVID response, and they said, when there is an emergency, and when there is a disaster framing, we are able to do things. But when the disaster moves, we are not able to replicate the same things that we did, because the system acts in a particular way when we are working under a pressure of disaster and under the framing of disaster, but it's not able to work in the same way after. So that, I think, is something that we can really think about in terms of institutions and governance setups. Next, please. And I think that's my last slide. So these are what I think cities, what's emerged with everything that I've seen in the last 1.5 years. I think there's not enough focus on localized data systems. There's a lot of local data with cities. PHCs have data on immunization, on all sorts of, basically migrants are registered, do come to PHCs for health services. There's tenant verification data with the police. There are lists for relief provision that were made, through COVID. Employers have data, but local governments are not mandated to collate this data in any way. Forget about mandated, they don't have the resources and the data systems to do it. There are a lot of, we do know that a lot of geospatial data was collated because there was a very disease management lens through which data systems functioned during COVID in India. And a lot of cities did great work in terms of spatialized data and looking at where containment zones would be and in all of those things. But that sort of expertise and energy was not extended to relief work. And this I find very, very sort of intriguing when so much data was there, but it stopped at COVID and health management. It just did not budge into any other area because of the way the mandates are configured in a very top-down and very sort of streamlined and point-to-point kind of a fashion. Cities need resources to implement provisions for portability and inclusions, which are outlined by higher levels of government. So you may have a Mamta card that pregnant women can carry. You may have an education card that migrant children can carry. You may have doorstep delivery as a principle. You may have one nation, one ration card. But the complexities at local level which need to be resolved, for instance, I may not have ration shop or ration outlets in areas where there are many, many migrants, because those migrants were never factored into the database. So now what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to open new ration shops? Am I supposed to facilitate delivery from ration shops in one part of the city to another city? That the city has to work out. But there's, again, no resource allocated for this kind of localized, problem solving. Convergence across departments I've already talked about. The framing of labor has its limitations, especially when we look at women and children. This is something we found. Women and children were systematically excluded from conversations on migration, even though states like UP, Chhattisgarh, Odisha were shocked at the number of women and children who were returning with the reverse migration streams. And so we know now, visually, we have that picture of large amounts of family migration, but how are we going to translate that into the way we look at this problem? I think cities, again, developed a lot of ad hoc mechanisms to work with employers and civil society during COVID, but how are these going to be systematized and evolved into longer term responses? And lastly, how are migrants themselves going to be facilitated by cities to know more about what they can access? I think that's all I have. Keshav, is there a slide? No, thank you. I'll stop there. I know there's more discussion coming. Thank you everyone for the opportunity.
Thank you, Muktaji. I think Very interesting set of slides and conversation around what we have learned due to COVID about migration in cities and how we have coped with it, how we made changes to the rigid systems that we had in place. But it's important that we are able to learn from this experience and change our systems to be able to build resilience so that in future we are able to deal better with it and in general have a better system of management. But I think there is more that we can also hear from other speakers for now, and participants. We would probably benefit to know about context from outside of India in terms of how migrants have dealt with COVID in general. But thank you so much for sharing these thoughts with us. Next, I think I'd be very happy to invite our esteemed speaker, Mrs. Manju Guru. Like I said, she's a strategic advisor for Pauraki, Nepal. The organization mostly focuses on migration of women and resilience. Mrs. Gurung has decades of experience on migration studies and impacts. I think it'll be great to hear from Manju ma'am about her experiences and what she has to share with us. Manju ma'am, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. Can I ask? Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. And I'm very much agree with the previous speaker. We do have the same experience in Nepal. So I would like to start from some positive notes, like the local government of Nepal has started to keep data, since we've been raising this issue that we don't have any data of migrants. So the government, after COVID, the government of Nepal has been started to keep the data of returning migrants. So we do have data from the local government and rural municipality and municipalities. The government has started. And the other thing is, like, the government of Nepal is now in the process of in the census. So we have 80 questions, and including migration is very important elements and key points in the census. Again, thank you so much, the organizer, for this opportunity. Okay, I will start my presentation. The government of Nepal, the 2015 Constitution of Nepal guarantees the freedom for Nepalese to move and reside in any part of Nepal. The population monograph defines internal migration as the movement of people within a country for the purpose of establishing a new usual residence. It points out that internal migration is an important aspect of Nepalese demography and includes horizontal internal migration, hill to hill districts, as well as vertical internal migration, mountain and hill to Tarai. In 2011, some 2.6 million Nepalese were reported to be lifetime migrants, and about 1.5 million of those had moved to the Tarai. Next slide, please. Internal migration in Nepal has increasingly become a livelihood strategy, with the majority of internal migrants originating from the hills and mountain region and moving to the Tarai. The Tarai now has fastest growing population. Migration was predominantly rural to rural or seasonal, with farmers moving to find the employment in towns in the agriculture of season, off season. This has changed in recent years, with rural to urban migration increasing significantly. Next slide, please. The internal migration is predominant by labor and rural to urban, rural to urban, hill to Tarai, and reverse migration, urban to rural. Next slide, please. As previous speaker has mentioned about the climate change is also drivers of the internal migration, natural disaster, earthquake, flood, landslide, COVID-19, and other drivers is like networking, education, health opportunities, income opportunities, and social prestige as well. Next slide, please. The other drivers are like social stigma and discrimination in terms of cultural, social, economical, political, in the name of caste and class, and also gender perspective. We have to include as well. And external migration is due to external migration, the income of the migrants population who goes for foreign employment have increased, and they have started, their family members has started to migrate from rural to urban, and seeking for easy life tendency, also the other drivers of internal migration as well. The other slide, please. And the other issue is, as a previous speaker also mentioned about the reverse migration. So at the moment in the Nepal, the reverse migration has been started like due to development in the rural areas and road accessibility, information and communication facility, TV, mobiles, and economic opportunity in the village. Agro-based rural enterprises has been started and increased, and village tourism, homestay, like, and cheap land for the agriculture as well. And political opportunity is one of the other elements that has been impact of reverse migration. And urban living cost is very expensive and costly, so people, those who have very poor of the poorest, they have started to to go from urban to village. That is also one of the point that I have mentioned. And I have some pictures that trends in the internal migration by origin and cultural location from Nepal labor force survey has mentioned that from rural to urban, 65.1% people have migrate. Next slide, please. I have a few slides that trends in internal migration by origin and current location from rural to rural and outside Nepal, and outside Nepal to rural areas, and urban to urban 3%, and urban to rural areas, and rural to urban areas. Next slide, please. And reason for migration overall is Nepal Labor Force Survey 2017 and 18 has marries 54%, and easier lifestyle 9.1, looking for work 5.5, studying or training 7.8%, start a new business 2.5, and other reason 2.8, and other family reasons like 18.4. Next slide, please. Reason for internal migration to rural, Nepal Labor Force Survey 2017-18 has also given some picture. Next slide, please. Yeah, and distribution of internal migrants by their occupation before migration. Nepal Migrant Survey has 2009 also has some data before and after, and agriculture, manufacturing, mining, utilities, construction, hotel, catering, transportation, trade, commerce, services, and others. I think I have finished my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manju ma'am. Is it possible for you to switch on your camera? Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing the slides and telling us about how this is happening in Nepal, and the numbers tell us a lot about how this happens. Would you be able to share a little bit before we move on to the next speaker in terms of whether you see this as a challenge in Nepal, or this is something that's happening very smoothly and government systems are able to absorb and adapt for migrants in the urban areas very well?
Well, I'm taking this, this is an opportunity as well as challenges. We do have lots of opportunities. COVID also brings a lot of challenges as well as opportunities for Nepali, Nepalese, and in terms of the policy reformation, also review and reformation also has been started. The health policy and the social security policy has been reviewed. That is also one of the positive achievement due to COVID, and like the challenges is like political instability and unfair distribution of rights, and in terms of class and caste, and also the gender issue is very negligible, especially in the force drivers of migration. Is internal migration is also one of the discriminatory provisions that has been practicing since long in our community, in the name of the class, untouchability, and that's why we have been raising the issue of SDG Global, SDG Goal 5 and SDG Goal 8. We do not have still a very dignified and prestigious living for women. So we are addressing this kind of issues and pressuring the government as an activist. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Manju ma'am. I think this was very useful to know a little bit about how migration happens in Nepal. We hope that as we move on, we hear more from other participants, and we are able to discuss a little bit more about how things are happening in Nepal. Thank you for sharing information and experience from Nepal.
Thank you so much.
I would now move on to our next speaker, Dr. Nishchalnath Pandey. He's been looking at, I think, issues of migration, but also trade, conflict, and security in general. I think Dr. Nishchal is going to tell us a little bit about migration across South Asia and a little bit about Asia as well. I welcome you, Dr. Pandey. It will be great to hear what you have to share with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ashish. Thanks to Mr. Imani Kumar. Thanks to Mr. Christian Ashley, Ms. Megha Sharma. Congratulations. The KASpaces has already emerged as a virtual institution, and all the kudos and best wishes to you all for your efforts. Now, I'll take the cue from Mr. Imani Kumar about just bullet points on this issue. I do not have a PowerPoint. There are 180 powerful people here. I have some points. I'll discuss some of these in a manner that I do not repeat myself to what the other speakers have already mentioned. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the problem of unemployment, especially the informal sector. I think that is number one takeaway home. And South Asian labor force used to be in massive number in the Gulf, in Malaysia, and in South Korea, and that is now falling. You know, my previous speaker just mentioned about Nepal, but the same story goes about of Bangladesh, of Sri Lanka, even of Pakistan. Now, the Nepalese labor has not been able to go to Malaysia for work for the last 20 months, 20. Now, that is a huge number trying to get into Malaysia for employment and send remittances back home. In South Korea, a lot of South Asian labor has passed language tests, but they have not been able to fly. Now, what does this mean? It means that 28% of our total GDP is dependent on remittance, and that is now falling. Some economists had predicted after the onset of the pandemic that remittances shall not fall. This is a transient phenomenon. And there was a lot of debate between academics and economists that South Asian labor in the Gulf and in Korea and Malaysia, they are so attached to their families that during distress, they will send remittances, even in a religious manner, even sincerely, even out of empathy. But what has now happened is that now we do see a falling trend. And this is a worrying factor. Second issue that I would like to highlight is the internal migration. We saw in India after the first lockdown, how nearly 10 million workers fleeing big cities, going to the rural areas. A lot of them were Nepalese also. They were coming out of Mumbai, major cities of Chennai, Bangalore, and Delhi, and trying to get home desperately through the open border. And there was a lot of negative news that they are now spreading COVID back into Nepal. The trend now has, Mr. Ashish, if you see this trend now, they are trying to go back to India because there is no work back home in the villages. So now they are trying to go back to India. The employment, the job scenario is not as good as we saw pre-COVID, and that is also exacerbating the problem. In Bangladesh, if you see the situation, 63% migrants were forced to return due to COVID-19, despite of having work visas. And among the returnees, 48.6 have already lost their jobs in their destination countries. So if you see a country like Bangladesh, which is a very large population, you talk about 48.6%, that's a huge number among the migrant labor itself. In Sri Lanka, the number of registered migrant workers going abroad has dropped by 50% in the COVID-19 period. And that is coming at a time when there is already economic recession in the economy. So the third point that I'd like to highlight is why can't we as South Asians, our envoys, our ambassadors in the Gulf countries, GCC countries, Malaysia, Korea, why can't they cooperate among themselves in destination nations? Because the scenario is the same. The problems faced by us as individual countries is more or less the same. The countries are not opening. The problems of visas are the same. So why can't we cooperate among ourselves, our ambassadors in those destination countries, our governments trying to come together? Because the implication of this is going to be dire. Number one, we are seeing unemployment. Number two, we are seeing falling of remittances. And this is coming at a time of great political tension in our region. The bilateral tension between United States and China, India and China, to some extent, India and Pakistan. This is happening at the same time as internal political instability. We just changed our government here in Nepal. So this will exacerbate problems and also raise the possibility of street violence, because we are seeing there's a lot of estimate here in our country that the massive number of youth unemployed, sitting back home, trying to get a passport, trying to get a visa. It's a recipe for, it is a dry hay. All you have to do is light a match. And this is all happening at the same time. So the economic situation of our countries should be gauged very carefully. Then the fourth question that I'd like to highlight is, of course, the South Asian countries' over-dependence on a handful of countries. We are highly dependent on what happens and the policies adopted by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, UAE to some extent, Malaysia, and South Korea, not so much for other countries, but for Nepal, it is very important. So after FIFA World Cup 2022, what is going to be the situation of labor demand in Qatar? I think a lot of us are grappling with this subject. because after 2022, there will be no need of building stadiums. And will this demand drop drastically? And if this drops, then what is going to be the future for South Asian labor? Malaysia has not even opened as far as Nepal is concerned. Korea, they have not been able to fly. So a large number of these young people staying here. Of course, the better option would be to generate employment back home. But this is not going to be possible since the COVID-19 pandemic has hit all sectors of the economy, including tourism. And for tourism-dependent nations like Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Maldives, this is also becoming a factor. But since tourism is also badly hit, then what are we going to do with this able manpower that is staying back home? Finally, I'll again like to thank you and this KASpaces for bringing us all together to bring in these new issues. But I hope I have done justice to the topic, because I think others were already touched upon by the previous speakers. What we need to do as SAARC as an organization, as our ambassadors abroad, they need to cooperate, coordinate among themselves at a time like this, because the issues that we face as nations is the same, and we have to cooperate to mitigate the challenges. Thank you very much, Mr. Ashish.
Thank you, Dr. Nishal. I think very useful the perspective of how migration is happening within countries in Asia and how it's impacting national economies. Very relevant and very useful, and an additional perspective to what's already been spoken on migration. I think this is very good as an add-on to the overall conversation we are wanting to have. I think it would be good to, based on all of the talks that we have heard till now, it will be good to move on to the next stage of the session, which is the question answer session. It would be good to hear from different participants your questions. Please use the Q&A box and share your questions. As we are receiving questions from you, I think it'll be great to hear from all of the panelists. Manju ma'am, you could switch on your camera as well. If you want to tell us a little bit about why, when we understand very well the importance, the relevance, the contribution that migrants make to the destination locations as well as home locations, this is something that is not in, it does not seem to be in the purview, in the focus of local administrations, local governments. By local, I mean destination governments or home governments also, to address the needs of these people who make such important contributions to how we are developing, how we are prospering in our destination locations, but also back home in our home locations. It'd be good to hear a little bit about what the challenges are, why we miss to think so much in a planned manner for providing better resources to migrants. And we'll move on to the next set of questions that we are hearing from people. I'd stop here and you can just go ahead in terms of what your thoughts are.
So, may I?
Sure, ma'am.
I'm very much with Dr. Nishant. He has mentioned a lot of things. Like, first of all, in the case of Nepal, the government of Nepal is, Nepal's policy is not like migrants friendly. So we have been raising this issue that the mission abroad, like in the country of destination, should have resourceful to address the issue, and the migration issue should be a political issue. And we've been raising the issue of like the political rights of migrants or voting rights of migrants who resides in the country of destination. Then the political leaders will be taking this as an important issue. So one of the key elements of the my conversation is the the political issue or political leaders should take priority the migration issue. And regarding the the previous speaker mentioned about the SHAR, I would mention about the Colombo process and Abu Dhabi dialogue. And we, among the country of origin, like sending countries from the South Asia, should have a common issue and common voice to bargaining with the country of destination. Nishchal Pandey, doctor has mentioned about that we have to rely on the policies and decision of the country of destination. So we have to have a collective bargaining, strong collective bargaining, and we have to so that we need to cooperate, collaborate among us, and we have to avoid the unhealthy competition among us, the country of origin. So, and the country of origin, that in Nepal, we consider that remittance is the backbone of the economic of the nation, but still it is not the priority of the nation. And also the gender issue is very important. The majority of Nepali women are migrating to a different part of the world, like as a care worker, as a domestic worker in the Gulf countries and the other part. But the government of Nepal has a restriction, and there is a ban for women to migrate. Because of this, women has to migrate through as an undocumented and as an illegal migrants. That creates a lot of challenges. So we have to have from the this kind of issue to abolish this kind of discriminatory provisions. So this is what I would like to mention, and I would like to flag on. Thank you so much.
Can I come in as a response, Ashish? So I'll just sort of take on what Manju ma'am said and put it in the internal migration context. So the same thing, I mean, there is actually a lot of bargaining or conversation going on between source and destination states in the aftermath of COVID. Source states are setting up centers, liaison officers, and putting in resources into destination states to manage their people in the other place. It's all really bizarre because, you know, it's not supposed to happen within an internal migration context, but exactly the same kind of stuff is happening. Not yet reached the state of collective bargaining where source states are coming together to intercede. But to answer your question, Ashish, I think two things are happening. First, I think we should understand that governments, they think through address fixity, and all systems are sort of very still, you know, it's very colonial. I think it's very embedded for too long. The systems are responding to people with address fixities. Urban planning systems do not consider mobility. Across the world, we are struggling with this, that, you know, what happens to mobile populations and because the population projections are always for resident populations. Floating populations are always kept out of that discourse. And we need to now say, no, you have to, because the extent of migration is so high and is invisible. So we're in a catch-22 because we don't measure it, it's invisibilized. And until it's invisibilized, it will not be seen as something that needs to be measured. So I think that's one thing. Secondly, mobility itself is not long-term 0.1. So again, a lot of questions, I think in the chat box, assume that we're talking about impoverished village to big metropolitan city. That's a very binary and simplistic understanding. What about small cities? People are migrating, people are commuting every day. People are doing Monday to Friday in a small city, coming back on Saturday and Sunday to their village. So all these complexities, and I think, like, for example, small industrial towns in India are absorbing a lot of labor force. Nobody's talking about them and strengthening their governance system for migration. That's much easier to do than intervening in a Bombay or a Delhi or a Dhaka. So lots of things, I think, possibilities, but I think our systems are not able to think about mobility. That's one. And second, to answer your question, I think there's a gradation. There is this idea that migrant informal labor, again, is because does not have a political voice. And so we can consider it as a replaceable footloose labor. But that's changing too. And we saw that states or places where skilled labor was required, employers made a lot of effort to get them back. And, there were a lot of those kind of things happening. But we have to note that the government wants employers to handle this in many states in India. So it also depends on whether the government is in the thick of doing things or whether it is actually in a neoliberal sort of a frame where you want to keep very minimal government and pass on these responsibilities to employers, and then bring in labor framing where employers have less and less a reason to be accountable for labor, which means that they're doing this all under the radar and informally. So everything goes into the domain of activism and collective demands and then that's really where the action is happening. So the action is not happening in the policy space. The action is happening in the political economy space, where migrants have already a very small voice, at least in the internal migration scenario. So that's where we are right now. And I'm to fully agree with Manju ma'am that the political front is where the most important emphasis should be, whether it's internal or international migration.
Thank you, Muktaji and Manju ma'am. I think in your responses, you've already answered a number of questions that we were seeing in the chat box. I hear that we are short of time and we'll be moving into the next session. I just want to give you a chance. If you have any additional points to make, please do that. Otherwise, I'd be happy to move on to the next session. Thank you then. And I think we've been able to cover a lot of ground in terms of what's happening, what's emerging. And the highlight of, I think, discussion today in the session has been how we are realizing the gaps in how government is responding to the needs of migrants, even though there is good realization in terms of the importance and the challenges they face. The ability to address all of this is something that is still being built. It's still in the process, and probably a lot of work is required to be done from beginning to develop data systems to document how really this is happening at country level, at local levels, and then try to put in place systems to be able to address this on a regular basis, on a long-term basis, but also to build in resilience for sudden shocks such as COVID that we saw recently. I thank you all for your contributions and a great session. I think it'll be good to now move on to the next session. I am happy to hand over to our panelists, our moderator for the next session, Ms. Pamela Kabakugan. She's a manager. She represents ICLEI Southeast Asia. Pam, you're welcome, and please take over for the next session. Thank you, everyone, all participants and speakers. Thanks.
Thank you, Ashish.
Thank you so much, Ashish. So I'm very honored to welcome everyone and our distinguished speakers in this very important and extremely relevant session on urban climate resilience. And the COP26 at Glasgow just concluded last week, wherein the world leaders have come together to discuss the next steps in addressing the climate and ecological crisis. And ahead of this important climate conference, the IPCC released a report on the physical science basis of climate change, wherein the IPCC once again validated that most parts of the Asia and the Pacific region experiences and will continue to experience hot extremes and heavy precipitations. And this would lead to consequences of catastrophic proportions, as we may face losses and damages in lives, properties, and economies that will disproportionately impact vulnerable populations if not acted upon with great urgency. And cities are situated in areas that are prone to climate risks, and as such, more and more cities are embracing urban resilience and have integrated this in their planning and decision-making processes. So we can move on to next slide, please. ICLEI, for instance, remains committed to in extending assistance to the cities by offering its tools and frameworks such as the Climate Resilient Cities, which is an innovative combined adaptation and mitigation planning methodology for cities delivered through 3 primary phases: the Analyze, Act, and Accelerate. Cities are also showcasing their bold actions by convening and publicizing their pledges towards forming resilient communities via the city's Race to Resilience. Now, going back to COP26, we have learned that the current NDCs of the member states are inadequate and would therefore require rapid and sustained reductions in global greenhouse gas emissions and achieve net zero by mid-century. We also learned that we fell short on receiving the pledged climate financing. And despite that, we have also managed to gain some big wins by agreeing that the developed countries pledged climate finance remains and has doubled allocation for adaptation fund. While we are yet to see meaningful progress on having dedicated resources for loss and damage, we have also achieved huge win as the Glasgow Climate Pact acknowledges the important role of stakeholders at the local, national, and regional levels, including indigenous peoples and local communities in minimizing loss and damage. And with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker, from the academic sector, as we are aggressively pushing for risk-informed strategies and actions. The role of the academe is indeed imperative. So to share with us some valuable insights and solutions, let's welcome Dr. Manjula Ranagalage, professor at Rajarata University of Sri Lanka. Dr. Manjula, please kindly open your camera and microphone, and the screen is already shared. The virtual stage is yours, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can I give me chance to share my screen? Then I think it's better if I can share my one. Yeah.
Sure.
Hello.
Sir.
Yeah. Can you minimize your one? Then I will share my screen. Then it's more comfortable for me. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me to conduct the one presentation about that climate, urban climate resilience. In my topic is as academic. Then my topic is how research helps to achieve urban sustainability in Asian cities. Then previously in Sri Lankan webinar also we focus on some research activities, how research activities help to achieve the urban sustainability in Asian cities. Then those are the main what are the major climate related issues in Asian cities? Then you can see I have listed some of the climate related cities in Asian cities. We have experience from these rainfall intensity, flash flood, and day-night temperature changes, increase in land surface temperature, increase in greenhouse gas emission, decrease in green spaces, especially in the urban area, decrease in living condition, increase in vector-borne diseases, increase in air pollution, and that kind of thing. Then what we can do as academic community, we need to find where are we. Then in this map shows that how that urbanization pattern in Mumbai, Colombo, Karachi, and Dhaka. That 4 cities, how that that capital cities, that commercial capitals of that 4 countries in South Asia. Then what is the urbanization pattern? You can see that from city center to how that the periphery area, how that green cover is increasing, and how that impervious surface, build-up surface is decreasing. This is the 2019 satellite images based land use and land cover analysis. Now you can see comparative study. Then comparative study always help us to compare ourselves. That means we can, as Sri Lankan, we have chance to compare Colombo and Karachi and Mumbai and Dhaka like this. Then you can see that how land use and land cover, that in a table it shows some more statistic information. Then the next one I'll show that how that temperature, land surface temperature, that we all experience in increase in land surface temperature in urban areas in South Asia, in like other countries in the world. But you can see that how it's changing from city center, that means city center area to periphery in all cities, and those kind of things. Then as academic, we can give some valuable contribution to the policymakers to rethink about their policies. Then I'll show another study we have conducted. Where are we? Past to present. That to develop better policies, I think we need to focus from past to present trend, how it's changed over the time, the spatial temporal pattern. Then this map shows the Colombo city from 1997 to 2017, how that build-up cover is changing, and respectively how that land surface temperature is increasing from city area. In not only the coastal city, but also the mountain city also, the experience, we have experienced that urbanization is happening, and also that is always affect to that thermal environment, increase in temperature. From this is the mountain city, World Heritage Mountain City, Kandy, Sri Lanka. That by looking at this pattern, the policymakers and government and non-government organization, they have a chance to rethink about their policies. Then those are the cities, the established cities, that now we need to focus on that. Some young cities, like that is the one of the city is rapidly growing city in Sri Lanka, that is due to the transport network and transport hub. Then Kurunagala, that one also, then you can see how that impervious surface increasing, and it's how it's negatively affected this increase in the land surface temperature. Then what we can do? Then once we develop the spatial temporal pattern, we need to think about how it's happened from the future. That means the prediction. Then you can see this is the one of the city in Nuwara mountain city, that how it's that land use and land cover change in over the time 1970 to 2017. And this part you can see we have simulated that land use and land cover 2027 to 2037. By looking at future direction, the policymakers and urban planners, and they can introduce better policies for the urbanization. Then I have prepared one roadmap to achieve urban sustainability by comparing with some academic and government and non-government organization. Then the first step, I think that urban, identify the spatial temporal pattern of the urbanization and its changes. That urban sustainability, everything is dependent on how that area is developing. Then first step to identify the spatial temporal pattern. Second one is predict the future pattern and its challenges. Then future pattern, by looking at the past to present, then future. Future pattern also will help us to rethink about our policies. Then third step is implement the urban development policy to address the present problems and minimize the future problems. Then number fourth is very important, review the implemented policies. That if we need to change it, we can change. If we need to modify, we can modify. If that is happening, it's good, then we can continue. Then achieve urban sustainability. Then how? These first is 2 steps we can achieve using research. Then third and fourth one, we can policy implementation. Then who will help to this one? The academic, private, public partnership, and the policy implementation, public private partnership. Local and central government and also donor agencies and also developed countries can help to achieve urban sustainability in developed countries in Asia. Then you can see finally we can achieve the urban sustainability. Then the immediate priorities to localize the SDGs in Asian cities, enhance the scientific research. Still that the lack of thing is that scientific research among the countries. We are isolatedly doing some more research, but we should know how we can combine our things, how we can compare our cities. Then it will help us to develop better urban sustainability in the future. The survey on sustainable urban development baseline situation and challenges for Asian cities. That one also very important, that we are focusing on the urban sustainability. We need to think about the survey on that selected countries, how, in what stage, what are the challenges, what are the future implications, and what are the issues, that kind of things. We need to get to one table and we need to discuss about that. That one will, the survey will help to find that information. Develop of the local SDG development monitoring framework and preparation of the city level SDG action plan, training and capacity building of municipal officers and subnational authorities, and stakeholder mapping and work together to achieve SDG. Urban sustainability cannot achieve as a single person. It is the region or some more countries. We need to think about our challenges. I think most probably we are as Asian countries, the issues and challenges most probably might be same. But we need to come to the one table and we need to discuss about that challenges. We need to map them and we need to come up with some solution. Enhance the research and planning capacities of the cities. Develop centralized integrated database management system to city level on urban system to their performance against national and global benchmark. And cooperative studies need to be compared past, present, and comparative studies need to compare the past, present, and future dynamics. The comparative means the whole countries. Conduct the survey to study about the urban sustainability issues, challenges, and Asian cities. Then it's urgent to need to international development agencies such as KF, Italy, and South Asian should be support to Sri Lanka and other Asian countries to successfully implementing these immediate priorities. And same time, I think that government and also non-government and donor agencies can enhance the research capacities among the academia in selected countries in region, and that the findings of the scientific research will help to implement better policies for the sustainable development goal in the Asian cities. Then those are the related publication based on the Sri Lanka, that I am engaged in more research in Asian and South Asian and also the African countries. We are now focusing on the African country as well. Then thank you very much for your kind attention regarding my presentation.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manjula. So I think one item that I was able to pick up from that is on rethinking policies, because at COP26, we already emphasized again how science-based or evidence-based strategies are really needed, and sometimes local governments or oftentimes local governments raise this concern about capacities on producing such researches and pieces of evidence needed to form such strategies. And I think the message here is that the academic sector can certainly come in to fill on that gap being experienced, to again rethink our policies towards urban sustainability. Now, moving on to our next speaker, the private sector is also another group that plays an important role in pursuing urban climate resilience strategies. So to share with us some innovative solutions that may also inspire our audiences here today, let's welcome Ms. Garima Nakarmi, Senior Architect at RG Design and Engineering in Nepal. Ms. Garima, please, you may now open your camera and microphone, and you may also start sharing your screen. The virtual stage is yours.
Thank you so much. May I share my screen first? Yeah, is it visible?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you KASpaces for making this happen and bringing us all together here today. I am Garima Nakarmi. I've been working as a practitioner architect, and today I'll be talking about building design practices in Nepal for its extreme climate. Being a small country, Nepal still has the various geographical reasons, the most variant from the mountain region to the flat of the South Tarai. So with the different climatic geographical reason, we have the way variant climatic condition, and that has brought up to the different vernacular architecture due to the availability of material and need of the settlement. So firstly, at the northern part, we have the snow-capped mountain called as the Himalayan region with the extreme climate of the minus 55 degrees Celsius to 25 degrees Celsius. Whereas at the southern part, we have the Tarai region up to the 33 degrees Celsius that goes up to high up to 33. While at the middle zone, we call it a hilly region with the most moderate temperature. So basically, we might have the various architecture and various building typology with the various climatic reason. But although with these variation, we apply the similar building policy all over the Nepal. The major drawback I have to put on with the building height, we use the light plane concept for the building height that has reverse effect in the dynamic nature of the sun. So as per the policy, if any building that follows the building plane concept would not have been able to ensure solar access at public open spaces or inside the building during winter, while we need the solar access most in the winter season. Also, Nepal has the adequate amount of solar access, thus this system might not be catered all around the region of Nepal. Plus, moreover, what we are doing now is increasing the height of the building just to cater the denser population at the city area or migrated people. So this has caused the adverse effect that has become the discomfort, indoor discomfort and outdoor disruption that leads to the high energy demand. So as the active energy demand increases, we put burden to the user with the financial and energy burden that is totally the disregard to the climatic condition of that region. So having all this policy system, let's get back how traditionally our architecture was developed when there were no policy, when people had to live in the extreme situation of the Himalayan mountain cap region where the wind velocity is very high, the region are really cold, and yes, there are summer, but the radiation are way cooler, and we needed a safer shelter then. So the vernacular architecture uses the stone, thick walls with the 16 inches to 20 inches thick walls that captures the solar energy and increases the thermal mass to trap the heat inside the house with a smaller opening so that the trapped heat would not go easily outside. And the low height system, the floor height were just for the 6 feet or 6.5 feet. That was pretty much good for the anthropometry of the human being of Nepal. So these were the techniques they used during the traditional architecture before the policy. So it has been serving well till now, but as the influence of the modern, we try to incorporate the picture shown before with the Himalayan region. The place is called Namche Bazaar. The same Namche Bazaar is now been using steel material, cement material, which does not promote which never promotes the thermal insulation, which never proposed the thermal insulation, and the big openings have more acting as the negative catalyst to trap the heat. So the ignorance of the thermal mass, as at the vernacular, we discuss about the width of the wall, which has to be 16 inches to 20 inches. But as we can see, we are been using thermocol steel as the building materials, which is not capable for insulating the heat. And this is because as we discussed with the local, this has been resulted because the lack of the quality manpower. The every manpower that knows the traditional construction has been migrated to the other cities or other countries for their better livelihood. So the knowledge transfer has not been done. And this kind of construction has been also a burden to energy as well as the financial. The cement cost of cement cost per bag cost is 890 Nepalese rupees in Kathmandu, while the same cement bag transported to the Namche Bazaar cost 10,000 per bag. So people are compelled to construct the high investment amount with the lesser indoor comfort and the energy burden plus. However, nevertheless, there has been approach of the sustainable development, sustainable architecture. Sagarmatha next is an art gallery that uses the waste material to create its sculpture, and it has been promoting a bag that lets the tourists or migrants that come to the Sagarmatha or roam around to carry their solid waste back to their home. So they have been promoting such social events also, and their architecture is a bit different than what modern have influenced Namche Bazaar right now. So even the building structure are simpler. What they have used is, we can see the larger opening at the left hand side, but what they have done with the openings is they uses the chrome wall system. The glass wall and the air gap between the wall creates the air to heat and the hot air to flows inside the room. So the room quality is always the hotter. So Himalayan region, we need the hot temperature inside, so we don't use the active energy to heat the room inside. So this kind of technology with the traditional materials is much more convenient to build, long-lasting and sustainable. The roof structure has been used to reduce to counteract the wind velocity of the mountain region, and the courtyard system has been used to create a sun space, the proper sun area to roam around. And we have also done energy analysis for this building. So by using the chrome wall, we have significantly reduced the energy load. You can see on the table, while the normal brick wall that we use in the city area has a higher amount of energy load. So this is just a map. So you can see the sun space at the courtyard and the wind velocity that flows along the direction, and the curved surface allows the wind to flow all around. So as I have talked about the building height at the beginning of the slide, so this also shows the height of the building and the open space are the ratio of the building and the open space creates a much more sustainable and comfortable spaces. This is one of the another example at the hilly region. This has been also designed by the Sustainable Mountain Architecture Nepal. This hilly region have counteract not with the trome wall but the rat trap bone. We can see at the other picture. So this rat trap bone is made of the simple brick but with the cavity inside that has created an insulation. Also the energy analysis of this shows that significant reduction in the annual energy load than the normal brick wall. So these are some of the changes and the building technology we can use with the material available. So basic concept of building a shelter or building a building is to create an indoor comfort regardless of exterior climate, because we have in Southeast Asia or also in Nepal, we have the various climatic conditions, but indoor comfort as stated by ASHRAE is between 22 degrees Celsius to 26 degrees Celsius. If we could create the indoor comfort in a building, so energy demand will ultimately lower, and the demand lower, we reduce the energy load, we reduce the financial cost. That is the sustainable approach for a building design, which creates a climate resilient building design. Thus, a proper adaptation of building science and use of materials, construction technology results to a climate responsive design. Also, this wide variation of climatic condition has to be catered respectively with the climatic condition of every region. I believe with the wise step taken in building configuration and material in policy level may be a greater aid to shape our climate resilient cities and settlements in all the climatic zone. So this is for today. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much, Ms. Karima, for sharing those best practices and examples for green building design. So as mentioned, I think we are also aware that the building and construction sector has a quite significant share in greenhouse gas emissions. And really with that knowledge, we are looking at the transitioning onto a more resource efficient green building designs that are also adaptive to the changing climate extremes. And I think that was also interesting that was pointed out in the presentation is the combining innovative technologies that are coming up, that are evolving with traditional designs, materials, and practices as well. So again, thank you so much, Ms. Karima, for sharing that. Moving on to our next speakers, I would say that many companies and organizations act as bridges and catalysts in accelerating climate action while also empowering local communities. So to share with us their experience in working with different stakeholders to do just that, let's hear from Ms. Carla Mumar, the founder and CEO of Scale Solutions from the Philippines. Carla, please, the virtual stage is yours. Please do turn on your camera and microphone, and you may also start sharing your screen.
All right, thank you so much, Pam, and good afternoon to everyone who's out there today. I'm really glad to be able to just share, things that we have been doing. So let me just quickly share my screen. Okay. All right. So again, my name is Carla. So I founded a social enterprise called Scale Solutions. So we are a startup based in Pasig City, Philippines. So we focus on empowering the underserved through disrupting education, taking climate action, and protecting human rights. Our goal is to help organizations and cities and communities to scale their advocacies and their campaigns and their social impact. So similarly to what Pam said, our goal is to really bridge a lot of these different components, and hearing all the different speakers today, and even the ones that I joined last time, there's just a lot of science behind it. There's a lot of technical methodologies. But one thing that I really see that is also important is our mindset. Regardless if which organization you're working for and which organization you represent, which country or city, it's important that we have the right mindset. It's important that we have, we understand what our goal and our mission is and our purpose, because that's the only way that all of us, from nationwide to, globally, in order for us to collaborate and really share best practices, and we'll be able to create a lasting impact and to move things forward in specifically addressing climate action. So first is bayanihan is a term in the Philippines which literally means being a bayan, being a city, and is used to refer to a strong spirit of communal unity and cooperation. And you might wonder, like, what does this have to do with, our topic today? It has everything to do with it, because we can have all the technology, we can have all the brilliant minds of this world, but if we do not understand why we're doing this, not just the science behind it, and we don't have the right mindset, all our efforts will fail. Because if you don't understand the mission, if we don't understand each other's strengths and weaknesses, and we don't empower each other, all of these solutions will be in silos. We won't be able to bridge things together. We won't be able to see what country can help the other country in cities and vice versa. So this is, the Bayanihan innovation concept has a few mindsets, that we would like to share. And of course, innovation is really about creativity, developing, and implementing of ideas to aim on improving life on this planet. So the 5 mindsets are very simple, and I wanna, keep it, very short. The first mindset is your purpose. So the questions that you need to ask yourselves, your teams, your organizations is, why do you want to solve the problem? Is it because, it's just my job? Or it's because, everyone's, talking about it? Why do you want to help, right? Are you helping because it's your job? Because a lot of people have that mindset. I'm doing this because I'm paid to do it. What is your truest intention? Setting aside any kind of political, issues, I think one of the most important things is that us as a human race really set aside our differences and really be able to come together and understand that we have one purpose. We have a common goal, a common purpose, which is what? To make sure that life on this planet does not cease, right? Life on this planet continues to flourish and grow from generations upon generations to come. Next is grit. So mindset number 2 is about, this is not a sprint, it is a marathon. A marathon is where you pass the baton, to different teams, to different experts, if you like to think of it that way. Because if we run it like a sprint, all of us are going to get so exhausted. I know time is not on our side. And, we've seen all these reports, and all the facts, backed up by scientific research. But right now at this pace, if we all sprint and we don't really plan it out, wherein it can be a marathon that we help each other by passing the baton because of their expertise, their experience, or whatever that they can help us with, then that's about grit. Grit is really about ready to face extreme challenges and being very determined and persistent. So determination and persistence is key to this. Running projects even at the locality, when we partner with both the private and public sectors, trying to bridge that gap, trying to explain to them, that we all have one goal and we have to set aside our differences. It took a while for us to be able to really get to the core of it and to be able to build that trust and that relationship. But that's where grit also comes in, because we don't just stop with one conversation. We build relationships with the communities, with the local government, with our partners. And it's not like a seasonal thing. We have to, it's like in any relationship, right? You have to be very purposeful. You have to be persistent and determined to build trust, to build that common ground. And this is all part of, mindset number 2, which is grit. The third one, mindset number 3, is about innovation. I worked in a lot of tech startups in the last few years, and one of the most important things is that we talked about fail fast, learn fast. So it's like, think big, hairy, audacious goals. Like the bigger the goals, the crazier they are. The likelihood of you trying to achieve it are much higher, or the probability. And it's like experimenting, fail fast, learn fast. So the only way we can really find solutions is we have to try it from a small scale and then be able to bring it to a larger scale. If we're afraid to fail in trying these solutions, these ideas in our communities or in our cities, in our countries, then how are we going to see new ideas? How are we going to see innovation? How are we going to get young people's ideas come into play? Because I really believe that in order for us to really build resilient communities and cities in the urban setting, is it cannot be just the government working. It cannot just be the experts and the scientists. You have to bring in the people, the communities on the ground. And innovation is about bringing those communities, bringing those people in. And this is where we help with innovation. Innovation is not just about technology. Innovation is about being disruptive in how you build relationships and how you engage, and really building a mindset and a behavior and an attitude towards, like, okay, having this crazy, big, hairy, audacious goals, this will allow me to have multiple ways of solving the problem. Because it is also very possible that there's not just one way to solve one issue. There are multiple ways, and it can be also a mix of different innovations and different ideas. And for me, that's really exciting, because that's where you see people will really be able to collaborate and work together, coming from different backgrounds, different countries, and different cultures. Innovation also can come from the people that like the indigenous peoples. Like, I personally learned a lot from the indigenous peoples in the Philippines, and they do have a lot of wisdom. They have a lot of things to share on how to address our existing climate issues. Innovation also does not equal to super high-tech solutions. Sometimes the simplest things, simplest innovations are the ones that are right in front of us. And these are some of the things that we have seen when we ran a lot of our climate solutions ideathons, where young people and also people from different generations really were able to innovate together and really apply it at a community level. The third mindset is, of course, bayanihan, mindset number 4, be a net contributor. So this is so I'm talking to all, both the public and private sectors. Instead of saying what's in it for me, what we should have a mindset of, what can I do to contribute? What can I do to help? How can I empower these young people? How can I empower my local government? How can I empower the private sectors? Because if we always think of what we can add, how we can help, if everyone has that same attitude and mindset, I tell you that all of us will have pouring of different ideas and more resources. Resources that a lot of, we see today that a lot of ideas or solutions are being put to a halt because of resources. Resources are not just like finances. Resources are, from, people, research, information, etc. But there's so many people around the world, even on this, webinar, there's so many experts, so many people from different backgrounds. If we all just come together and then we share a few best practices, a couple of points here and there, I'm sure we'll come up with something that will be able to take action immediately at a small scale and do a pilot, and then see how we can scale it, to other communities and cities. Next is unite and set aside differences. This is easier said than done. With politics and differences, both in the public and private sector, the whole bureaucracy of it. But I think it starts with us. It starts with us, it starts with you and me, that we set aside our differences we accept the differences in culture, the differences in how things are done, in the cities, and then see what we can do together and move things forward. Next is synthesize ideas with citizens and the public and private sectors. So it's about really involving the communities. When we did our climathons since 2019, one of the most powerful things is that when we saw people just coming together and sharing their ideas, expressing also exactly what's happening on the ground. And this also happened when we did our focus groups, when we did training with the communities. It's real and raw, tangible experiences that are happening on the ground, and not just based on a report that we saw, but really experiencing it really sets the tone and makes things different, which brings people to come together, which that's why the mindset for Bayanihan, bringing people together, setting aside our differences and seeing what we can do to help is very, very important. The fifth one is mindset number 5 is act now. It's important to take initiative and learn. I know that there are, all these conversations, conferences need to happen as well, but it doesn't mean that things on the ground need to stop. So take initiative to learn, even if you're an expert, if you're coming from let's say the local government or a larger institution, it doesn't mean that you stop also taking initiative and learning. Communities more at the personal level, learning about like why are they having difficulty, and really also understanding what's happening with the climate today. Even if we've already defined in even in the local language what climate crisis is, what's climate change, they still forget or they still don't understand. It's still that you still have to continuously engage and talk to them and really take initiative to learn why they're not really processing it. These mindsets that I'm sharing is not just for us. It's also training and equipping the mindset of the communities, the cities that we're trying to help. Because if they do not understand it, they will not be able to help us rally the troops. They will not be able to help us move the needle and really take action. Because like what I said, it can't be done by just one institution or organization. Everyone has to come together to take climate action and to see the solutions come to reality. I encourage, people, especially from the, the communities, to join your local environmental groups. This is very important. This will also help us understand, what the urban setting is and what is really resilience, right? Is it just, Filipinos are always known for, it's always on the news that, we're resilient. But the thing is, like, being resilient, it's not just about, being like happy even, or like being okay after a disaster. It's being able to come up with a more strategic approach to stopping those crises from happening again and again. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of seeing my countrymen, especially in areas that don't have a lot of access, to support, having the same kind of problem in terms of the climate, like the typhoons, the floods, the lack of food, and all that. And that's why it's important to join these groups, because they have a lot of very localized information, and they'll help you to experience it. Next is engage and collaborate with your locality. I think that for me, as a private citizen, like, one thing that when I engage with the local government or in the communities, I don't wait for them to reach out to us. We really reach out and say, how can we help? I think that mindset of acting now and saying that, how can we help you? How can we innovate? How can we help build a more resilient, community and city, and really address, all of the issues at least the top issues that the city or the community is facing. That's what we mean when we have the mindset of acting now. Since 2019, Scale Solutions, together with our co-organizer Future Proof, Scale Solutions brought a Climathon, which is a climate solutions ideathon, to the Philippines, and it's a global movement. And this is not just a webinar. The winning team's Scale's goal is to work together with the local government, which we have been doing, to come up to bring and implement those pilot of the winning solutions in the city. So we've done that for 2019 with Club and Recycling, wherein we were on the ground, we were talking to the communities and seeing how these ideas can be sustainable and can be good for the urban setting, how we can really build, the resilience of the community. So there's like from plastic, waste management, there's on food security, there's also on mobility recently, there's also for clean energy, as well. So all of these we really keep track of. We train the teams. We raise the fund for them to implement a pilot. We open it to partnerships as well to really address what's happening in the localities and the communities. And we do it at a small level to pilot it. And then we help them scale their ideas and partner with the local government. So I hope, this short message has inspired also everyone to really see what you can do. And if you want, to partner or to collaborate, for us to help you to scale your advocacies and your campaigns to really address the social impact and take that climate action to see tangible ideas, see it into a reality, please send us an email. We'd be more than happy to help and see what we can add to your campaigns and projects. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Carla, for sharing that to our audience today. And yes, I'm from the Philippines, and the Bayanihan value is something that I hope can also be inspire our audience here today to really rebuild on our sense of community and humanity, and hopefully use that as a value to bring our own climathon in our own cities and communities. I've been very fortunate to have been part of Climathon, and it's really an exciting and interesting and fun activity to really learn from different audiences, different stakeholder groups on what they can do together with local governments to address, to implement climate actions. Now, may I invite our three speakers today to stay on our virtual stage. If you could turn on your camera, and I think we may be able to answer some questions from our audience. I'm also inviting our audience to participate in this portion of the program. You may type in your questions to the Q&A box, and I'd be happy to read that for you. Okay, so there was an insight, I believe an insight that was shared here in our Q&A box earlier about providing that idea of integrating nature-based solutions in expansion of cities, in urban planning and urban designs. And I think that is something that we would want to take away from this session also when we're talking about urban climate resilience. I think there's another question here sent. How did the COVID-19 redefine our concept or our idea of urban resilience in the region or in your country? And coming from the recent COP26, what do you think is something that our national government or local governments can do to upscale the adoption of urban resilience strategies? So I would invite any of our speakers to respond to this. Would anyone want to start?
Yeah, that one question regarding that nature-based solution. Actually, that most of the cities that established cities, they don't have more privilege to enhance the green cover and that kind of green water and that kind of nature solution. But that what we can do is that we can identify that urbanization pattern of the country, and also we can find what are the young cities, the developing that cities, the connection cities, some other some cities. Then that beginning of that urbanization and also the middle level of the urbanization, we can give more priorities. We can develop the planned city concept. Then we have that green, blue concept. That means the nature-based solution for that to minimize that urban-related issues. Some cities like Mumbai, Karachi, Dhaka, Colombo, we don't have privilege to that provide more green cover, because that what we can do is at least we can protect one single tree in that city area, and also enhance some other activities to increase the green cover, that means green and water. But if we can properly identify that urbanization pattern of the country, we can, when we from past to present, and to the once we develop the scenario and future direction, we can identify some sub-cities. For that one, that city, we can develop based on the nature-based concept, that means nature-based solution. That is why we conduct that kind of one research in that rapidly urbanizing intermediate city in Sri Lanka, that Kurunegala. Then Italy also joined with that research, and that Krisha was also one of the author of that paper. And that we did now urban policy planners and planners, they know what is the pattern, what is the trend. Then they can think about how they can give their priorities to enhance the green cover, enhance the water, and that the zoning concept, the planning for that residential areas, commercial areas, some mixed development, that kind of things. I think in the future that for urban sustainability, that we need to more focus on that nature-based solution.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manjula, for that. I hope our participant was able to get that response. Ms. Karima and Carla, is there anything you'd also like to add?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Manjula, sir. I really liked how he turned the nature-based solution for the urban planning. So such kind of practice we are initiating here in Nepal. Like there is a policy that the municipality cannot pass any drawings of the building without a tree in it. So a compound land must have a tree in it. So like that's just a simple solution, but it encourages the green plantation overall the city area. Also, our valley has initiated the pocket park solution. So any land that has been congested and could not be used, the smaller area which has been abandoned, which can be used for the building or any spaces, those are renovated for the park, green space, cycle lanes. So such small movement could bring a green space and open space to the overall the urban settlement, which can be obviously a nature-based solution that gives building science encouragement, and definitely, as I said, the energy demand would be lower, which decreases the financial burden to the users. So that would be my say. Thank you.
Yeah, Pam, can I quickly share something? I think with regard to that, the first thing that the most tangible and quickest action that you can do is, where do you live? That's your urban space. So you start by creating, planting some plants, your little urban garden in your own home. That's the very first thing, because how do you expect that, to build more like pocket gardens and stuff, in the actual city, if you as a citizen do not take an initiative to do something in your own home, right? So during COVID, a lot of people started to plant, their own fruit and vegetables in their home. I also tried that. So I'm growing some lettuce, some tomatoes, and some chilies, just some herbs, the basic things that I need. So I live in a building. So that's my little urban, space with my little garden, focusing on the environment so that some of the basic produce that I need, I can plant and grow. That's the first step. Because I believe, as a private citizen, if I am not willing to make that change in my own life and to make that step, how am I supposed to also be accountable and responsible and take care of whatever these big projects, from the private institutions and the government, puts into play in my city? Because when these big projects are built, us as citizens are also responsible and accountable and taking care of it and appreciating it. So we have to start also in our own homes. And that's the quickest and fastest climate action that you can take with regard to this.
Thank you so much, Carla and Ms. Karima, for sharing those insights. I think we're running out of time, so we're closing this Q&A portion of this program, but feel free to ask our speakers in the Q&A box and they'll be able to respond to you directly. Again, thank you so much. I believe we learned a lot from this session that we hope to bring back to our own cities and our organizations, as we have strongly advocated at COP26 and in this KASpaces platform. Multi-stakeholder and multi-level collaborations are extremely important to truly translate our climate commitments into actions. And thank you so much to our dear speakers for imparting your knowledge and expertise today, as well as to our dear audience for listening and participating. So I'm handing it over to Ashish for the next portion of the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. And as you've all probably seen in the agenda, our current session is more about hearing from you, the participants. We've had the fortune of hearing from a number of learned panelists. We've heard about SDGs, the status of how we are trying to achieve them. We've heard on internal migration, and we've also heard on climate resilience. We've heard perspectives from specific countries, Philippines, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and a little bit of inputs which span South Asia and Asia-wide. So it would be great to hear from all of you participants, your own experiences, your own comments, suggestions, or areas, points you feel we could not cover very well but are very important. I'd really like to open up the floor and ask you to raise your hand so that we could get a chance to hear from you in terms of what you would like to share as part of this forum, enriching our experience a little bit more to tell us from your own context about climate change, about migration, but SDGs in general, please. So I'd ask the facilitators if you see raised hands or interest from participants to share their thoughts, allow them to speak, and it would be good to hear from them. So this is interesting. I do not see any raised hands or any interested participants who would like to share their thoughts as of now. Please think about if you could tell us a little bit about how you're experiencing migration related issues in your own context, or something that you want to share that's relevant to the current conversation that we are having, anything on climate resilience and an overlap, which is about migrants who are moving from their home locations because of climate impacts, because of changes in climate that are reducing the opportunities for them for employment and or work or better life, and are so moving to other locations for better opportunities.
So Ashish, if I can interrupt, there is a question from one of our audience. The question goes, it's from Miss Indica Gunawardana, and she's asking, do you have any recommendation to ensure the building safety when encouraging plantation on building? Sometimes there can be easy degradation of concrete, and when people are not aware on the safety side, it can affect to the safety of the building. So maybe we can request Ms. Garima ma'am to respond to this question.
Hello again. Yes, I was reading that question only. Yes, there are the technologies which can ensure the safety for your water seepage things or structural things, whatever you are aware and concerned about regarding the plantation. So when we see green walls, the plantation over the walls, the plantation over the roof, there has been done some structural implementation and waterproofing system, the TPC layer, plastic layer. If you are doing simpler plantation, a plastic can might help. If we are doing the whole roof plantation, maybe you need some technical support with the chemicals or anything. So there are technologies which ensure your water security, seepage security, and structural security while doing the plantation. So maybe the local concern and available material would be better. You need to consult a technical person for doing so.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, ma'am. So there's another question on how we can, create and expand urban areas by urban, maybe I think they're talking about the water bodies, the tanks, pond, and wetland, and how we can secure them and ensure their sustainability. So this is related to water bodies and urban green areas and also the nature-based solutions. Maybe can we request Mr. Manjula to respond to this, Dr. Manjula?
Yeah, actually that's a very good question. That one thing is that in urban area, that most of that in inland cities, the coastal cities, we have a lot of wetland and also some kind of water bodies. Then what we can do is we can keep remaining on these things without doing much changes, and we need to preserve them to that protect the to adopt the some kind of bad impact associated with the urbanization. Then first thing is we should have proper mechanism to identify the changes over the time from what happened to that the water bodies and what happened to that wetland from past to present. Then we can think the pattern, and also we can give a strong policy decision to preserve that kind of wetland and sensitive areas and environmental sensitive areas. And another thing is we need to do some the large level ecosystem service analysis for that wetland areas and also some and other marshy land or some kind of things. Then what we can do is just another one is the without there is a two solution. One is keep as it is without do any changes, and also if not, what we can do is we can give some development, and also we can keep that area for benefit for the environment, that urban community. They can go and relax that place, and they can we can increase the walkability of that one, and also that the water-based and nature-based solution for that to minimize the stress of the urban communities. Then I think best thing is to do proper analysis and also the proper investigation on what happened from past to present and what will happen in the future for that, especially in wetland and also the water bodies.
Thank you, Banjulasa. I think that's useful, and I don't see any more questions coming from any of the participants or any reactions. I think it will be good to move on. Then just making an announcement that the session is being recorded, and you would be able to access the recording of this session on the Facebook and YouTube channels of ICLE, as well as KAS website. So we'll be able to have you look at that. And if you have any questions or if you want any information regarding the sessions, you could write to us. You all have the agenda and contact points shared with you. Here on, I think I would like to hand over to Ms.
Megha is actually, unfortunately, she had to go for some other meeting, so she is not available. So we can conclude. Oh,
okay.
But we have Mr.
Ashley is there. So
yes.
It'll be great to have Mr. Ashley probably share some concluding remarks and allow us to conclude the session. Ashley, sir.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all of the speakers for the first day. I think it was an incredibly insightful day, and what I had formulated in the beginning, I think it came into play. So we learned a lot from the different examples that we heard today, which I'm very thankful for. And what I really liked is the passion of the speakers and their involvement in the topics was really visible. So we discussed internal migration in the technical session 1, and we discussed the urban climate resilience in the technical session 2. And it's great to see that a lot of our audience stayed on board, and I would like to invite you to come back tomorrow. We will start at the same time. This is 10 o'clock in Bangkok, 11 o'clock in Singapore, 8:30, if I'm not mistaken, in India. Tomorrow we will hear a keynote address from Honorable Datuk Seri Utama Idris bin Harun, the State Minister of Government of Melaka, Malaysia. And then we'll have 2 technical sessions, one on affordable housing and one on holistic waste management. So invitation to join us tomorrow. Thank you so much for your attention today. I hope that you really gain some insights, some new ideas. And with that, I would like to wish you a good day and see you tomorrow. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.